Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I work as a stagehand at a local theater, which means I'm always dressed in black. It's practical for staying out of sight during performances, but little did I know it would lead to such a bizarre misunderstanding. That Friday, I had a few hours to kill before my evening shift, so I decided to visit my friend at the popular chain restaurant where she works. She's a waitress there, but sometimes bartends too. When I arrived, she was behind the bar, and we started catching up. I was standing at the counter, chatting with her during the lulls between customers. Everything was going fine until she had to step away to take care of a table in her section. That's when things took a turn for the weird. Out of nowhere, this lady storms up to the counter and starts yelling at me. She demanded to know where I'd been, complaining that they had been waiting for refills for 45 minutes. She was clearly upset and called the situation unacceptable. I was taken aback, trying to process what was happening. I tried to explain that I didn't work there and wasn't her waitress. This lady, let's call her Karen because that's exactly what she was, absolutely lost it. She accused me of lying, saying she had been watching me stand there doing nothing. She called me lazy and incompetent and threatened to get me fired. Before I could even respond, she slammed her empty cup on the counter and ordered me to refill it immediately. I decided to play along, thinking maybe it would diffuse the situation. I agreed to her demand. I reached for my water bottle and poured it into her glass. Big mistake. Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red, and she started screeching like a banshee. She yelled about health code violations and threatened to report the place to the health department, claiming we'd all be shut down. Her shrieking attracted the attention of the manager, who rushed over to see what all the commotion was about. He asked what the problem was. Karen launched into a tirade, calling me the worst waitress she'd ever seen. She complained that I had ignored them for almost an hour, and when she asked for a refill, I had contaminated her drink with outside water. She demanded that I be fired immediately and threatened to sue the establishment for endangering her health. I was trying my hardest not to burst out laughing. The whole situation was so absurd, it felt like I was in the middle of a hidden camera show. The manager looked at me, then back at Karen, confusion evident on his face. He tried to explain to Karen that there had been a misunderstanding and that I didn't work there. You'd think this would be the moment Karen realized her mistake and apologized. But no, she doubled down. She insisted it was impossible, pointing out that I was wearing all black like the other servers. She accused the manager of covering for a lazy employee. The manager, bless his patience, tried to explain again. He assured Karen that I was not an employee but a customer who happened to be dressed in black. In a fit of rage, Karen grabbed her cup and threw it onto the counter, splattering water everywhere. She shouted about how outrageous the situation was and claimed she'd never been so insulted in her life. The manager's patience finally ran out. He asked Karen to pay her bill and leave, warning that if she didn't calm down, he'd have no choice but to call the police. That seemed to get through to her, but she wasn't going to leave without a final performance. She angrily dug through her purse, threw some crumpled bills on the wet counter, and stormed towards the exit, all while yelling about how she'd never come back and how we'd all regret this. The manager turned to me looking apologetic. He expressed his regret that I had to go through that ordeal and asked if I was okay. I assured him I was fine, more amused than anything else. To make up for the ordeal, he insisted on giving me a free appetizer. I happily accepted a plate of nachos, which I shared with my friend once she finished her shift. I'm a guy in my mid-40s, and I've been dealing with sleep apnea for most of my adult life. It's not fun, but I've learned to manage it with my CPAP machine. Everything was fine until this lady moved in next door about 6 months ago. At first, she seemed nice enough, always waving and smiling. But then she started talking about how she was a health guru and how she could cure anything with her essential oils and natural remedies. I'd nod politely and go about my day, not thinking much of it. One day, she cornered me while I was getting my mail. She greeted me cheerfully and asked if I was okay, mentioning that I always looked tired. I explained that I was fine just dealing with sleep apnea but had it under control. She immediately dismissed the idea of using medical devices, insisting that her essential oils could cure my condition. I tried to politely decline her offer, telling her that I was satisfied with my CPAP machine. But she was persistent, arguing that the machine was poisoning me and that her oils were all natural and would heal me completely. I just nodded and hurried back inside. A few days later, I came home from work feeling exhausted. I decided to take a nap before dinner. When I woke up, something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but then I realized my CPAP machine was missing. I searched everywhere, thinking maybe I'd moved it and forgotten. That's when I noticed a weird smell in the air. It was coming from a diffuser on my nightstand, one I definitely didn't own. Just as I was about to call the police, there was a knock at my door. It was Karen, looking way too cheerful. She enthusiastically greeted me, hoping I was feeling better already. She explained that she had taken care of my nasty machine and set me up with something much healthier. I was shocked and angry, demanding to know if she had taken my CPAP and telling her I needed it. She dismissed my concerns, insisting that I didn't need the machine and that her oils would cure my sleep apnea in no time. She assured me that I would thank her later. I was furious, but she just wouldn't listen. She kept going on about how she was helping me and how I'd see results soon. I tried to argue, but she just waved me off and left. That night was a nightmare. Without my CPAP, I couldn't sleep properly. I kept waking up gasping for air. The smell from the diffuser was making it hard to breathe, too. By morning, I felt like I was dying. My son came to check on me because I wasn't answering my phone. He found me barely conscious and called an ambulance. At the hospital, they told me I'd had a severe apnea episode and the essential oils had triggered my asthma, which I hadn't had an attack of in years. While I was recovering, my son called the police. They started an investigation, and that's when things got really crazy. Karen actually tried to defend herself, saying she was just trying to help me. Can you believe it? The police didn't buy it, though. They charged her with home invasion and practicing medicine without a license. When we went to court, Karen was still insisting she'd done nothing wrong. She tried to defend her actions to the judge, claiming she was only trying to help her neighbor and that the machines were dangerous while her oils were safe. The judge wasn't having any of it. He sternly reprimanded Karen, pointing out that she had not only entered her neighbor's home without permission and stolen his medical device, but her actions had also nearly cost him his life. He emphasized that her so-called cure had triggered a severe asthma attack in addition to endangering him with sleep apnea. Karen attempted to defend herself once more, insisting that she was a health guru and knew what was best. The judge shut down her claims, stating that she had no medical training or qualifications. He declared her guilty of home invasion, theft, and reckless endangerment. The judge threw the book at her. She got sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay for my hospital bills and a new CPAP machine. She also got slapped with a restraining order so she can't come near me or my family ever again. I'm doing better now. I've got my new CPAP and I'm sleeping well again. My son convinced me to install a security system, just in case any other health gurus get any bright ideas. After serving my time in the Marines, I decided it was time for a change. The military life had been tough but rewarding and I felt like I'd done my part. So I packed up my bags and headed back to my hometown, ready to start a new chapter in my life, college. Now, moving back home was a bit of an adjustment. I went from the strict routines of military life to the more relaxed pace of civilian life. In all the chaos of settling in and enrolling in classes, I never got around to changing my phone number. It wasn't really a priority, you know? I mean, who would have thought keeping a Camp Lejeune area code would lead to such a mess? At first, everything was going smoothly. I was enjoying my classes, making new friends, and generally living the college life. But then, about a few months in, the calls started. The first one caught me off guard. I was in the middle of studying for a test when my phone rang. I answered, and the caller asked for Corporal, not my name, saying he was late for duty. I politely explained that they had the wrong number and that I was in Corporal Not My Name. The caller apologized and said they'd make sure to correct it, but they never did. The calls kept coming, about once a week. Each time I politely explained that they had the wrong number and asked them to correct their roster. But apparently this Corporal Not My Name was as bad at updating contact info as he was at showing up on time. As the weeks went by, the calls got more frequent and more irritated. I started to feel like I was living a double life. College student by day, mysterious absent corporal by phone. It was almost comical, except for the fact that it was seriously disrupting my studies. One particularly memorable call came from a staff sergeant. He called asking for Corporal Not My Name, mentioning it was the third time that month. I tried to explain that they had the wrong number, but the staff sergeant didn't believe me at first. He thought I was trying to pull one over on him. I had to insist that I wasn't their corporal, but a college student, and that I'd been trying to get my number removed from their roster for months. There was a pause, and then the staff sergeant asked if this was some kind of joke. I assured him it wasn't a joke, just a very persistent mistake. After that call, I thought maybe they'd finally fix the roster. But nope, the calls kept coming. It was like being haunted by the ghost of military punctuality past. Then came the Monday morning that changed everything. I was sound asleep, enjoying a rare moment of peace before my early class, when my phone exploded with the loudest, angriest ringtone I'd ever heard. Groggily, I answered. It was a gunnery sergeant, and he was furious. He yelled at me, thinking I was Corporal Not My Name, demanding to know where I was and why I wasn't at my desk an hour ago. He threatened to have me scrubbing toilets with my toothbrush for a month if I didn't show up in the next 10 minutes. Now I'd been patient. I'd been polite. I'd explained the situation more times than I could count. But something in me snapped. Maybe it was the rude awakening, or the months of frustration, or just the sheer absurdity of the situation. Whatever it was, I decided enough was enough. I let the gunnery sergeant finish his rant. Then, channeling every ounce of Marine Corps attitude I had left in me, I unleashed. I yelled back at him, calling him names and telling him I'd been out of the Corps for months. I made it clear that I wasn't his corporal, wasn't late for duty, and definitely wasn't going to be scrubbing any toilets. I even went as far as to make crude comments about his wife and mother and challenged him to come down to the barracks and say all this to my face. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then, without another word, the call ended. I sat there, heart pounding, half expecting a squad of MPs to burst through my door. But nothing happened. The days went by and my phone stayed blissfully silent. It's been years since that day, and I've never received another call from that base. I learned an important lesson though. Never underestimate the power of a good old-fashioned Marine Corps chewing out, even when you're the one delivering it. I've always been the kid who couldn't wait for Halloween, who devoured horror novels, and who dressed in black year-round. My family never quite understood my interests, but they tolerated them until now. 2 years ago, when I got engaged, I knew exactly what kind of wedding I wanted. A Halloween-themed celebration complete with gothic decorations, spooky music, and guests in costume. It wasn't just a whim, it was a reflection of who I am and what I love. My fiancé was totally on board, excited to create a unique and memorable day. I found the perfect venue, an old, slightly creepy mansion with a sprawling garden. The catch? It had a 2-year waiting list, but I didn't care. I was willing to wait to make my dream come true. I put down the deposit, sent out save the dates, and started planning every detail. For 2 years, everything seemed fine. My family knew about the theme, and while they weren't thrilled, they didn't object. That is, until 6 weeks before the wedding, when my mom and grandma suddenly decided my wedding was satanic. It started with a phone call from my mom. She began by saying we needed to talk about the wedding. When I asked what about it, she expressed her and my grandma's concerns about the Halloween theme being inappropriate. I reminded her that they had known about this for 2 years. She then revealed that they had been praying about it and thought I should change the theme, insisting it wasn't too late to have a nice, normal wedding. 2 years of planning, and they wanted me to change everything at the last minute? I told her that I wasn't changing anything, emphasizing that this was my wedding and this was what I wanted. She argued that it was satanic and questioned what people would think. I retorted that it wasn't satanic, just Halloween, and that I didn't care about others' opinions. I stressed that this was about me and my fiancé, not anyone else. Over the next few days, I got calls and messages from various family members, all echoing my mom and grandma's concerns. It was like they had formed some kind of bizarre anti-Halloween coalition. The final straw came when my sister called. She informed me that she didn't think she could be my bridesmaid anymore. When I asked why, she explained that she felt uncomfortable with all the Halloween elements. That's when I snapped. I'd had enough of this ridiculous power struggle. If they didn't want to support my wedding, fine. They didn't have to come. I spent the next day canceling invitations for everyone who had complained or sided with my mom and grandma. It was about 25 people in total. I replaced my sister as a bridesmaid with a friend who actually supported me. Then I sent out new invitations to fill the empty spots and created new QR codes for the guests who were still coming. The venue agreed to only let people in with the new codes. I thought that was the end of it until my aunt called. She demanded to know what I thought I was doing on inviting people from my own wedding. I explained that I was having the wedding I wanted with people who supported me. She argued that people were allowed to disagree with me and that it didn't justify pulling their invitations when they had already made plans to attend. I countered that they had 2 years to voice their concerns and that saying they weren't coming 6 weeks before the wedding was unacceptable. I told her they had made their choices and were now facing the consequences. She accused me of being unreasonable, but I completely ignored this nonsense. Yes, it hurt that some of my family wouldn't be there on my big day, but I refused to compromise who I was or what I wanted just to make them comfortable. The wedding day arrived and it was everything I'd dreamed of. The old mansion was decked out in cobwebs and candles. Jack-o'-lanterns lined the aisle. Our guests arrived in amazing costumes, from vampires to witches to zombies. My dress was a gorgeous black lace creation that made me feel like a gothic queen. As I walked down the aisle to the haunting strains of "This is Halloween," I saw the faces of the people who truly loved and supported me. My fiancé waited for me at the altar, grinning in his Dracula costume. And in that moment, I knew I'd made the right decision. After the ceremony during the reception, I got a text from my mom. She said she was sorry and that she regretted not coming. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I put my phone away and joined my new husband on the dance floor, surrounded by the people who had stood by us. Maybe someday I'll be ready to reconcile with the family members who had tried to change me. But for now, I was too busy enjoying my perfect Halloween wedding, exactly as I'd always imagined it. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.